Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. Today's show is about the New Hampshire Family Courts. Here in New Hampshire, the courts are supposed to provide justice. But are they engaged in racketeering? Are they engaged in serving the interest of the children in divorce cases? We've had many people on this show ask that very same question. We've had lawyers, we've had business owners, mothers, grandparents. Today, we have a police officer who has served with distinction for over 20 years here in the state of New Hampshire. In his ordeal, he is slowly discovering his disillusionment with the New Hampshire family courts. In all this time that he struggled and is struggling, he's also fighting another battle, a battle with MS. We hope that this show is providing information to you to help make changes. Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and I'm here with an officer, Anthony Macaione, 20 years on the Rochester, New Hampshire Police Force, and a highly decorated officer, and he has a story to tell us on Speak Up. Welcome to the show, Anthony. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, you're a police officer.
Yes, sir.
And you've been a police officer in Rochester, New Hampshire?
Yes, sir, since 1989.
Since 1989. And one of the things that I discovered, we did a little Google, and it shows that you got a few awards. You want to talk a little bit about some of your successes as a police officer?
My 23 years with the City of Rochester, I've won various awards. Officer of the Year, Ted Blair Memorial Award for my chief, a very great chief who passed away of cancer at an early age. Most recently, in May, I took an award, the Haze Award, for being the ambassador to law enforcement for the city, being community policing and being somewhat like Red Haze, who's kind of an icon in the city itself prior to my being hired. Obviously, he's from way back, but very well-respected police officer within our city. Some life-saving awards over the years, meritorious service awards. I've had a pretty full career.
All right. Have you ever been disciplined for any actions in the past at all, or?
Nothing on the job or anything like that. You can get written up for stuff for being late to work or something like that, but I've never been written up to the point where you lost your job or anything like that.
Right. Okay, so just typical. All right, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked that, you're not a felon or anything like that. You're actively a police officer now.
I'm currently working 32 hours. I'm retired. I retired December 1st, 2007,
Okay.
and I was welcomed back to continue working as a public housing officer for the City of Rochester.
Oh, good. Well, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
And I wanted to start off just to talk a little bit about that because, again, you being a police officer are finding that our system, our family court system, has some problems.
Oh, 100%.
All right. Tell us a little bit about the story. Now, you are recently divorced.
Correct.
And there were some reasons for the divorce. There was some infidelity, but it wasn't on your side. It was on her side.
That's correct.
And there was a time period where you had custody of the children.
Yes, there was.
Okay. Now, let's take it from right there. You have the children, all three children?
In the beginning of the divorce, there's 4 children involved. My daughter was a senior in high school at the time of my wife's separation from the family. So she graduated high school, and my wife had departed the family in August of 2009. At that point in time, I had all 4 children, 3 being, one being in middle school, 1 being in grammar school, and 1 being in high school.
And you were full-time employed?
I was a part-time officer then.
Okay.
I retired in 2007. So in 2009, I was working part-time.
And was she working?
She working, yes, in the medical field.
Okay. And full-time, part-time?
She makes a pretty good paycheck. She works 28 to 32 hours in the dental field, and she's making that year $82,000.
Okay. Nothing to sneeze at. That's a nice
No,
salary.
she's making good money.
Right. So you basically are going through the system, and it didn't take very long for you to be disillusioned with some of the processes of the courts. And let's take it from there. Let's talk about the custody and child support.
I was greatly disappointed in the fact that I'd never been divorced. I expected my marriage to last a lifetime. I mean, I love my wife. I love my family. I was trying to hope that this was going to mediate itself out and that this was something that was going through life that was just going to be one of those things. But when I actually entered divorce court, I realized for real that this was going to end our marriage, and I was concerned for my children. We both had lawyers. I went through the system. We started out with the first day of court, and the first day of court was automatically, you realize you're sitting there, you're awestruck. I mean, I've been in court systems before, criminal court, and I've never been in a court system where it's evolving around my family, my children, and the woman I love, so I was awestruck. But I went through the motions. It's a first appearance, and you pick a guardian ad litem.
Now, were you forced to take a guardian ad litem, or was that, did you do it voluntarily?
I'm sorry?
Were you forced to have a guardian ad litem, or
Well,
was
yes.
it court ordered?
Correct. A court orders you. I paid my retainer fee to my attorney, and he told me that they select a guardian ad litem. He explained it to me fully and said that basically they're going to select somebody. We have a choice of who we want, and they give you 3, and you can select one. If we don't like that one for whatever reason, we can ask for another one, but we have to agree to a guardian ad litem with your wife.
Okay.
And I did.
Okay. And you went into a contractual agreement with her?
First appearance, I went there, and they gave a brief speech to everybody that was involved in that courtroom at that time. And they basically said it's a $500 fee up front. You have to give a check that day for $500.
A piece?
A piece. My ex-wife and myself had to give $500 because that's part of what they said. It's a retainer fee, and that's the one-time fee. I paid it, and she paid it, and we were assigned a guardian ad litem at that point, I believe that day.
Were there other expenses that incurred after with the guardian ad litem?
There was. I actually, at that time, was having financial difficulty because the fact of the matter is when my wife had departed the family, I was left with almost $7,000 worth of bills. And without her income leaving, I really had a hard time, even with my retirement and working another job. I actually ended up eventually taking a second job. But I felt like the entire time I was there, I was being belittled for more money, and it was more money, more money. And my attorney called me in and said the guardian ad litem had petitioned the court because it's a private divorce that she's now wanting more money, and then she's going to ask for, instead of the $500 from you, it's going to be another $1,000, and she's entitled that based on the order from the court. So I explained to him, I said, sir, I can't afford to pay that money. I'm having a hard time now making bills. I got kids in school lunches. I've got a lot of responsibility here. And he said, well, you have to do it. You don't have a choice. So I said, I don't want to. I signed a contract. I believe that if I signed a contract, it should be binding. At that point, I told him, listen, I'm not paying the money. I don't think it's right. And he says, you have to. I felt like I was being strong-armed. And
into an additional $1,000?
Yes, it's an additional $1,000 on top of the $500.
Was she going to have to? Was your ex-wife going to have to pay the additional $1,000 as well?
Correct. So it went from $1,000 to $3,000 for the guardian ad litem.
What was the justification for the additional money?
The justification was the fact that I did a financial with the court because your court ordered to do a financial interrogatory, and once I did that, she's reviewing that, and she found that she felt I could pay more money, and it's based on what she feels she's entitled to.
But up to that point, had the guardian ad litem done any work?
Absolutely no work whatsoever. I never met her.
And she felt entitled to another $2,000
Correct.
without any work being exhausting the first 500 apiece.
Correct.
Was there an hourly rate as well?
Yes, there was. I received a letter from my attorney. It was addressed to her, and I brought it here today. And it said, basically at the bottom line here, it says, this letter serves as a confirmation of my agreement to represent the minor children. And it basically goes on to say, as this is a private pay case, my hourly rate is $125 an hour. I have requested a total retainer in the amount of $1,000. You will notice in my fee agreement letter, I have explained the deviation from the standing order limits.
Was this prior to the judge's approval?
At this point, basically, she had sent this to the court, and the judge had approved it because, therefore, my attorney told me it was accepted by the court. And it says here, I would be grateful if you would accomplish the review and signature of these documents as soon as possible. My investigation will not begin until the retainer has been received and the GAL stipulations have been filed with the court. So basically, she's asking, apparently it would tell me that she's now filing with the court.
Prior to any additional
Correct.
work being done?
Absolutely.
All right, we're just gonna forget about this for a few minutes.
Okay.
And we're gonna move on. Had she gone forward, no, actually, I want to move on. Take us beyond this point. At this now, you're having a conflict with the guardian ad litem. That's your first roadblock.
Yes.
Okay. What's your next roadblock?
The next roadblock was I was having great financial difficulty, and I had told my attorney that I needed some help with the child support as far as paying the bills.
Because the children are living with you in the
Correct.
physical home.
That's right.
All right. You're not completely divorced at this time.
We're separated.
You're separated, and you're assuming all of the household financials.
She took her car payment.
Okay, but you still have to run the house.
I have everything.
Okay.
At that point, my attorney then set up with an associate of his because he was on vacation. He had one of his associates represent me in the 4th District Laconia Court. And on January 4th, in that period of time right there, I have a letter that was sent. We went to court. She had her attorney there, and I had asked with my attorney that she stop paying child support to help me. The marital master was Michael H. Garner. He heard this, and I was in total disbelief. I couldn't believe it. I believe under 548C, child support is mandatory to support your children in the state of New Hampshire. He asked right over the bench, ma'am, are you prepared to support your children and willing to support your children at this time? And her attorney did one of these numbers and whispered in her ear and stood up and said, no, Your Honor, not at this time. She's not willing to do so. My attorney objected, and at that point, it was taken under advisement.
Educate our viewers. What does that mean?
It means he's not going to make a decision on the bench. He's going to look at the preponderance of what was just told and heard, and he's going to probably review the financial aspects of it and render a decision later. That's what taking it under advisement would mean.
All right. To the best of your knowledge, she's making about $80,000 a year. She has a car payment, whatever that is. But the rest of the mortgage, the house, the food for the kids, the clothes for the kids, the bringing them to school, is she paying any money towards that?
No, I had a first mortgage, a second mortgage, a home equity. I had school lunches. The medical and dental, when you retire from my agency or the city of Rochester, you have a medical subsidy from the state of New Hampshire, and it's $751 a month. But in the first year, I mean, you got to subtract that obviously from what you're paying. Well, the medical for an HMO, for a family plan, not counting dental, I'm still paying $1,400, $1,500 a month, and at some points you're paying even more because it went up over the years. At no time did she ever support her children, and even when I asked, you're just not going to get it. They're not going to do it.
During this time of separation, so you're basically your full-time dad, and you're doing all the responsibilities. You asked in court. It was under advisement, and what was the answer? Finally, after all the...
it came back, basically the marital master had stated to the judge, it was Lucinda V. Sadler, that they felt that it wasn't going to happen because she faced the same financial difficulties that I had. And I could not believe that was so far left thinking...
Do you have that in writing?
I believe it's in one of the orders that I have. There's so many orders in this divorce case, it's so complicated, that it said that she's facing the same financial transition as him, so it was denied. And I said, how can you, I went to my attorney and said, how can he even come up with that number? Because it's so far left that I am stuck with all these bills, and she walked out of here. And in fact, at one point in time, in December, I have a postcard that's postmarked. She only sent it to 2 of her children, saying I'm in either Aruba or somewhere. I'm swimming with the dolphins. I'm working my butt off trying to support my family. She's on vacation. I mean,
So-
it's disgusting.
With her $80,000 in her single car payment, was she bringing the kids to school?
No,
Was she buying clothes for the kids?
no,
Was she buying food for the kids?
no. What she did do was during my daughter's senior year, which is my youngest daughter, she ended up trying to get her aside from me, and she actually, my daughter had left the home for a period of time. I don't think it was more than 3 or 4 months. And what had happened was before the holidays, my daughter had come home, but she had bought her, traded in her vehicle in and bought my daughter a Mercedes-Benz, and also she had an Audi Quattro, all-wheel drive. So she bought 2 vehicles. And I was thinking, how do you afford that? But she was, technically what she was doing was buying the
Brand
children.
new?
I don't believe they were brand new, but we're talking 2009 when this happened, so they were probably 2008s, 2007s.
But that being said, the point I'm trying to get out of is the fact of the daily parenting. She wasn't involved with that at all.
No.
All right, and so you're taking on these tasks. We can put a dollar figure to parents, spending time with their kids. I mean, I think that's what the courts are supposed to do.
Right.
And so she's not providing any child support for you then, seeing how you are doing all of this work.
Correct.
And the court said she's got her own problems and therefore, tough luck, Charlie.
She's not supporting her children. She's enjoying vacation and life.
When was the divorce final?
It was August 2010.
2010. At 2010, how many children are living with you?
At that point in time, I had 2.
Okay.
And she had been able to wrestle away my youngest son, and she got him in a situation where she filed a false report to DCYF on me, and my attorney advised me this could be complicated for you. And at that point, he says, you're going to have to make a decision. He wants to be with his mom. So I didn't want to cause any animosity between his mom and him. I just let him go.
So did she file with DCYF?
There was an investigation, and it was unfounded.
Okay, and it was unfounded. So
Unfounded, dismissed without merit.
do you have that in documentation?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So now it's dismissed. She's living with him, and you still have...
I still had my daughter, who was in high school, her senior year, and I also had my son, who was a freshman.
And still at this time, no child support from either side is going on at this point?
That's correct, none.
Now, as soon as your youngest is now living with her,
Right.
Something transpired, correct? She filed a motion for child support?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
What had happened was, during the process of the divorce, we filed our financial interrogatories, and because I was tasked with when I tell you tasked with bills, I took on a job with the Sheriff's Department, Stratford County, also working for my agency, and at that time, based on the laws and governing my part-time employment, we were able to work outside details, able to work another job, and that recently changed last year, and basically this year, now you're down to 32 hours. What had happened was she knew I was having to work my butt off, and which I did, and I'm talking some weeks, I'm not kidding you when I tell you 90, 95 hours a week. That's not a lie. That's what I was working, and it was difficult on me. I then was hit with telling me that I have to pay her child support based on what I was making, because I think her attorney knew that I'm making money to pay all these bills, so they used it against me to say now she wants child support, even though we both have the same amount of kids.
Well, you had 2 living with you, and she had 1 living with her.
Right, and so they decided that because she now, in the process of this divorce, her reported wages had diminished. Don't know how, don't know why, but she was paid commission, but all of a sudden, her wages had gone down from the original figure of $80,000 down to like $60,000. So,
and all 3 children were living with you at one point.
Correct.
And how long did you have all 3 children?
I would think probably 6 months, because right after the holidays, my youngest son ended up going with her.
All right, so she files a motion, and then the court says yes?
Yes.
Based upon the fact that she lost $20,000 or not?
That she had Yeah, it had gone down and paid, but they felt like now that I should be paying her X amount of dollars. And I had been to the court several times. I lost my attorney back right after the divorce was final. I asked for him to appeal it. He did not. I didn't feel like I got due process based on the merits of the case. I instructed him that I wanted an appeal, and that wasn't going to happen. When I caught him in what I considered to be an absolute lie, and it was an absolute lie.
Your attorney?
My attorney.
What's his name?
Will E. Bach from Dover, New Hampshire. He had advised me that he had subpoenaed the correspondent, being the gentleman that my wife was with, because the grounds were for adultery. He asked for a warrant on the second day of trial for the correspondent's arrest for failure to appear on a subpoena. I thought for sure they were going to halt the trial and wait for time for this gentleman to be arrested and brought back to court so we could get due process. As we were walking out of the courtroom, the judge took it under advisement, which was the marital master, Michael Garner. I'll take it under advisement. So I thought there was going to be another day. There was no other day, and when I walked out of the courtroom, there was the co-respondent standing in the parking lot, basically laughing and looking at me, and I said, well, there he is right there. We're going to get a warrant for his arrest because we could probably take care of this right now. Is that him, he says? And at that point in time, I realized that he never subpoenaed him. For some reason, you could see it in his eyes. They didn't expect him to be standing there. Now, being in the police field, you know there's a witness list. The judge puts this trial based upon the time constraints of what the witness list is. He would have known this guy wasn't on the list, so why would he even entertain a warrant for his arrest and take it under advisement? He could have clearly stated to my attorney that he was never subpoenaed, so therefore he didn't have to be there. So it was more like, to me, a charade. They were putting a show on for me to let me think that there was just something else.
Who's they? Your attorney and the judge?
That's her attorney, and her attorney knew that he was subpoenaed. So, you know, it's just one of those situations where I was misled, and I was under the impression through all the actual evidence, and this sculpatory evidence that should have been brought forth, that I was led to believe by my attorney that the court wasn't going to hear it and it was suppressed because they weren't going in that direction. And then I found out later that it was my own attorney that absolutely wasn't coming forth with it, and I felt like they conspired together, all three of them, because they weren't going to bring forth this evidence because it opened a whole can of worms. And when people tell you it's about money, it truly is, because my attorney said, you couldn't afford it. In other words, you couldn't afford the cost, and the cost was expensive. At $375 an hour, that's expensive.
Right. All right, so the courts at this point are awarding your ex-wife child support, and how much of your income is that?
Well, she was awarded in July of 2011 $1,350.93, which is 30% of my pension. I pay what they call a qualified domestic relations order when we were married.
So she tapped into your pension?
Oh, she's been getting paid for almost 18 months now.
For child support?
Well, that was that's a settlement on my pension. That wasn't child support. Now...
Why does she get part of your pension?
Because she was married to me. So they awarded her my pension. I didn't get any of her 401k, but they told me that was considered property and that she got 30%. And I said, okay, I was fine with that.
How much was her 401k?
I don't know, because at one point in time she says it was only $20,000 because she had changed jobs, but then she was borrowing money on it, and I got a letter from somebody that said good luck, and she had just borrowed $17,000 on it, and it said you can't borrow more than half, and that was like months, you know what I mean? So you don't know, because the court doesn't really care about how correct these numbers are, because I pointed out clearly that the numbers were so far left that they're inaccurate, and they weren't willing to correct them. And then later, like I said, this year, my son graduated high school. He's enlisted in the military. He's now in training in Texas. And I went back to court for contempt because she hasn't paid me anything. The second mortgage, she was ordered to pay me second mortgage. She didn't. She was ordered to pay me half the medical and dental for the children. She did not. She was ordered to do something with some other items like a credit card. She did not, and she was supposed to do it within 90 days of receiving my pension. That was 18 months ago. So I filed contempt charges. I went back to Laconia District Court, and they then decided to send it to Dover District Court. I went to Dover, believing they were going to hear contempt, and it was all about child support. When I went there, the gentleman says, we're not here to listen to contempt. We're here to listen to the child support. Then they found that on top of the $1,350.93 I'm paying her, a little over $1,400 and something more that I got to start paying her, and they found me to be $10,000 in the arrears. So I was notified the Division Health and Human Services that my passport was going to be suspended, and I was reported to the IRS, and that my income tax return, if I'm receiving one, will be confiscated.
Who was the judge in this?
That judge was Judge Patton from Dover. So I'm pro se at this point, because I've been pro se the whole time since my attorney withdrew after he got caught, in my opinion, not telling the truth.
I'm kind of baffled. They hit you up retroactive?
I would have had retroactive money that she owed me, but they weren't addressing it. And she was court-ordered, so I was there to say, when is she going to pay me? And the judge said, you'll have to go back to the other court.
And so in the other court, instead of going after the money that she owed you, they said, wait a minute, you owe her more money.
Correct. And I said, how do I owe her more money when she's now making more money than me since last year, when she's getting my pension on top of what she was making?
She's getting
and I'm now retired, and I'm making 32 hours. I'm not making that kind of money. So I have an attorney right now, Mark Moeller from Dover, New Hampshire, who's representing me on the reconsideration. The reconsideration is going to be to go back and look at the numbers that I actually made. Don't use a 2010 tax return. Use what I've been making and what it is today, because I'm set in stone at 32 hours based on my hourly rate, and that's what I make. And like I tell them, I have no problems supporting my children. I said it in court. I love my children dearly. I still help them as much as I can.
But you've been supporting your children.
Right.
I'm confused, but we're going to move on, because
Okay.
Where are we now? Was there a Judge Brown involved with this as well?
Yes. Back in 2010, my ex-wife's boyfriend at the time filed a restraining order on me. And at that point, a restraining order to a law enforcement officer means if it's put in place, you lose your career. You are no longer a police officer. They take your weapon, and you no longer can carry a weapon in the state of New Hampshire, and you lose your certification. This was done because I filed a letter on her for going into my house and violating a court order and removing things, and I filed it with the police department, and I notified the court. The court put in there that it appears she violated the court order. However, it seemed to work itself out.
That's what they wrote?
That's what they wrote, exactly. And I found that to be appalling, because the fact of the matter is, I don't know how it worked itself out, because I wasn't talking to her, and the property she took I never got back. But I then decided to put a trespass order on her through the Alton Police Department. She was living in New Durham. She was served with a trespass order. And at that point, I think the boyfriend felt, well, I'll protect you on that one. So he filed a phony thing on me, and I had to pay, on top of this money, it was $2,300 to defend that. It ended so quickly because it was a lie. I had a witness that said it was a lie. It's a bold-faced, flat-out, categorically, it's a lie. But it cost me $2,300, which sits me back even further.
Right.
And my attorney asked for reimbursement. And that judge said he'd take it under advisement again. About a year went by. I'm financially strapped. I'm trying to think, why isn't I getting a decision back? So I went to Stratford County Superior Court, and I then found out that he didn't sign the order.
Who didn't?
Judge Kenneth Brown, and he did not sign the order. So then they said, we can call him because he no longer works. He's been reassigned to another court, and I think they said Manchester. And I waited an hour. They were able to locate him, and he refreshed his memory, I guess, and said, I didn't award him. That was the end of the story. You don't get awarded, you have nothing. And what had happened prior to that, I had tried to go to small claims court to recover the money in Dover, and I was told by Judge Morrison, no, you have to go back to Superior Court because that order would have been sent from that other judge. That's what sent me back to the Superior Court to try and see if they had awarded me the money. They did not. And then when that happened, I realized that I had no chance at all. You just give up.
Do you feel that the courts are not acting justly?
I found that this court that I've been in, and I can't speak for all people, is about as gender biased as you're ever going to see. Mm-hmm. I think they violate the state laws. I think they do it intentionally. I think if you don't have an attorney representing you, they try to take advantage of you. When you do file motions, they give you a hard time about accepting attachments. They absolutely make it ridiculously difficult, so that I have enough presence of mind of being in the court system that you know when you're being wronged. And I can tell you right now, the clerks I dealt with in Laconia, you can see it in their eyes. You can tell that they've been coached and tell me what they're going to do. They're not going to answer your questions. I've been reassigned to Dover. They've been most helpful, excellent, the staff down there. If I ask and I need something, they do it And it's just amazing.
Give me an example of what laws you feel that the courts have violated.
One of the laws that came down to we have what they call, other than 548C, which is child support, they have what they call a qualified domestic relations order, which is a quadro. And that's when you take out when you retire for your spouse. It's an additional insurance policy. So the way the state law reads, if you retire, she's entitled to 50% of your retirement upon your death if you don't select an option for survivor benefits. Right. So you pay for the other 50%, and it's based on your age, her age, and stuff like that. So they give you a figure at time of retirement. You do that, and it stays in effect for 120 days. You can change it within 120 days of yourself retiring. I didn't expect to be divorced, so I had no problems giving my wife 100% if I were to die. Obviously, I wanted her to have 100%. The only stipulation of that is, if she's receiving a retirement benefit, the way it's written and I have it here under New Hampshire state law, that if she remarries, she loses the retirement benefits completely, 100%. If she remarries, she doesn't even get the 50%. She's done.
Is she remarried?
Yes, she got remarried September 10th, 2011, and I found that out, and I then appealed to the court and said, I don't want to pay that money anymore because it says here, retirees who designate their spouse as primary beneficiary under a survivor option and later become divorced may cancel the option if their former spouse remarries. Upon cancellation of the survivorship option, the retiree will begin receiving the maximum retirement allowance. Retirees may change their contingent beneficiaries at any time. I tried to do so and I was denied, and they said the quadro is in effect, you can appeal it to Supreme Court. So I said to the judge.
To the Supreme Court.
Right. You can't, I said, sir, you made a decision here. It is wrong. I did not sign off on this for a reason. I've advised you 3 or 4 times, it's in the index, that it's illegal. And basically, the way it is, I called up the Supreme Court, and I spoke to somebody up there who's supposedly an investigator. So I said, well, in order to do this, they need another retainer fee. And I said, I don't have that money. So it's kind of like you, sir, going out in the parking lot and finding your car window smashed, and I tell you, well, yeah, it's a violation of law. Obviously, it's criminal mischief. But before I can do this report, I'd like to have $5,000 from you because I know it's a violation, so I'm going to violate you again. So I want that money before I do the investigation. And I'm thinking, why do I have to pay for an investigation when the state law is specific in saying it's protecting me as a citizen? Why do I have to have a judge violate the law and not willing to change it himself? I find that hard to believe.
To add insult to injury, apparently there was a credit card taken out on you.
That's correct. I had taken out a credit card in 1984. It was through Sears, and it later became a Citibank credit card. That credit card I had pretty much for a long time. One time I was driving back to Florida, lost a master cylinder, and then I realized I had cash. I needed to get a credit card. I was in East Rutherford, New Jersey. So I had to pay out of pocket, and that kind of set you back. So I said, maybe I should get a credit card as a young kid. I did. I kept my credit card because it had sentimental value. I got it in Florida, and it was just something I had. I had that credit card my entire career up until 2011. I used it sporadically for whatever, but never had a big balance on it. There was never a history on it. Upon the separation from my wife, 2 credit cards were ordered. They were sent to a P.O. box. They were platinum. I had a gold that was still valid. I went to refinance the home under the current order that said you have 2 years to refinance the home or sell it. I was trying to refinance because I had kids in school, and I definitely wanted to make sure they stayed in the school district. I filed, and Citizens Bank said, you're denied based on your income to debt ratio. I said, well, I don't understand. I'm working all these jobs. I'm killing myself. I pay my bills. Can you combine the first and second mortgage and the home equity and give me one bill? And they said, no, you have credit card debt. I said, I don't have credit card debt. Oh, yeah, you do. Well, unbelievably, it was banked out for almost $21,000, and then it was paid down to like $13,500 and something. Well, there's no way the credit card company can contact me because it's going to a P.O. box and then to her boyfriend's address in another county. Upon the discovery, I filed a complaint with the police department for fraud and identity fraud using my name. At that point, it was filled out and sent back to me. He doesn't live here anymore. So I filed a criminal complaint, and currently I can't talk about it because it's under investigation right now with the Stratford County Attorney's Office for felony fraud and identification fraud.
Okay, so
basically my credit's ruined now because what happened was I've been notified, like my insurance company doubled my insurance on my car. Anything I can't even get a Home Depot credit card. I mean, my credit rating went from almost 800 down to like 500 because now it hasn't been paid on, and she's been court ordered to pay it upon receiving my pension 18 months ago. She has not paid a cent.
Has any of this interfered with your routine business as well, being a police officer? You had mentioned something about a routine traffic stop.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm on duty, and I'm working a detail up on Route 11 in Rochester. My specific duties for that day is to enforce the speed limits because it's a high volume traffic in that area. You have construction workers, the whole city's under construction, and they specifically ordered the company, Severino, to have a cruiser up there with radar and a camera. Early in that shift, I had an opportunity. I stopped a white car. The white car, the woman identified herself through me, and I had her ID. She had some kind of a medical emergency. So through competing harm, she was speeding, and I said, you know what? You have a medical emergency, and make sure she's going to get to the hospital. She's on her way to the hospital. She didn't need an ambulance, and I believed it. Then I found out she was under suspension. She was not going to the hospital because I said she was going to the hospital. I verified she didn't go to the hospital. 2 or 3 hours later, I have a white car going eastbound on Route 11.
Similar to
the shape of this car and stuff, and I'm thinking, here we go again. Speeding, I activate my blue lights, I pull out, and I initiate a traffic stop. The vehicle pulls over to the right-hand side on Route 11 up by the Mercury dealership and Toyota Lincoln. And I went to get out. I called in a traffic stop. I went to get out of the car, and the car takes off. I then jumped back in the car and said, got a problem here. This guy's not stopping. Send me another unit. He's not speeding, but he's not stopping. I'm hitting my sirens. He's just driving along like 20 miles an hour to the right-hand side of the road, but he's not stopping. He stops again. I wait. I go to get out of the car again. He takes off again. So at that point, dispatch comes back to me and says, 50, do not approach that vehicle. We have the caller online, 911, and he's in fear for his life or something. And I said, okay, send the supervisor. 2 more cruisers arrive. The vehicle stopped. I'm not going to approach. I stay and watch the vehicle, and that's about it. The next thing I know, his attorney shows up in front of the cruisers and says, I happen to see the officer pull my client over. Well, that's not true because there's 3 cruisers. How would he know who it was? But what we do find out is that through the call from his client that he notified his attorney. So he showed up, and I felt like I was being set up. You know,
who was in the car?
It's now my ex-wife's husband.
Okay. So, all right. How does this look at dispatch back at the office?
Well, I mean,
how did this pan out?
It pans out that they asked me what I want to do. I said, just let it go. It's not worth it because you know what?
It always costs you money.
No, it's not even that. It's the fact that it's so immature because they filed so many complaints on me. I mean, between the restraining order, I'm out working details, and they're giving me the finger driving by. They're doing stuff. It's hot out there. And, you know, it's one of those things where...
Trying to trip you up.
Absolutely. And I got so much to lose. My kids love me. I love my children. I'm not going to throw my career away. I mean, if they want to harass me, and then I finally had contacted an attorney and said, listen, I'm being harassed from these people. They've subsided with it, and it's water under the bridge now, but it's the course of conduct where you're trying to do the right thing for your family, and they continuously hammer you, show up, make up lies, and it's like, it's so detrimental to your moral well-being. I mean, right. I don't even understand why they would do that.
You're serving your community, and you figured you would get some justice to some degree.
Yes.
Being in the field of justice, basically providing justice for individuals and protection. So where do we go from here?
Right now I'm trying to wait for the reconsideration. I've got 1 daughter in college, 1 daughter graduated college. My son's in the military right now.
You're speaking with him? Everything's good?
Yeah, well, he's in basic training. He did basic training. I couldn't afford to go to his basic training graduation. There's no way. I mean, I'm borderline going to go bankrupt anyway.
If you don't mind me asking, where's he going to basic?
What is he what?
What state?
He started in Jackson, South Carolina, and that was basic military training there, and then he's in Fort Sam Houston, Texas right now. He's going to be a combat medic, and then he goes to Fort Benning, and at that point I believe he's going to be assigned possibly 82nd Airborne out of North Carolina, Fort Bragg. Wow. So he's a heck of a nice man. Yeah. He's a good boy, you know.
Yeah.
very proud of him.
I'm sure you are.
Absolutely.
Very. Yeah, my son came back from Afghanistan, and
He's serving his country, and I tell you, I'm a veteran, so I know that he's doing what he believes is the right thing to do, and I'm very proud of him.
Right. Well, that's good. You came on Speak Up because you wanted to tell your story.
I did, and I really would hope that what prompted me was the letter it came out in the Attorney General's about the domestic violence and the families, and how people are dying needlessly because of, I believe, that the family court system is so far left that they actually facilitate some of the stuff, because if you take a person who's been betrayed and he's looking for help and you've tried to do everything you can, you're not going to allow that to happen. At some point, the desperation, the victims are itself the people who actually perpetrate the crime. I mean, you've got people out there that are desperate. And if you are, it's like looking at your wall right here. The court will point you in that direction and say, find your way out. There's no way out.
Right.
Because they're not going to listen to you, and they're not going to, you can't advocate before a court that's blind and deaf at the same time. So these poor people, including myself, have been subjected to a system that, in my opinion, it's all about money. They don't care about the children. It has nothing to do with that. It's all about dollars and cents and how much you can get. And I outline, you go to mediation, that's a lawyer.
Right.
Your guardian ad litem is a lawyer. You have a lawyer. Your marital master is a lawyer. Your judge is a lawyer.
I wanted to go back to that towards the close here. How did that resolve with your guardian ad litem? How much did you end up paying?
Between me and my wife, $3,000.
And it was settled. And what was the outcome of their findings? Did you see what
The
the
outcome
result
was she didn't talk to anybody on my side. I had principals to talk to. She just talked to the children. I think my oldest daughter didn't even want to talk to her. Erica didn't even show up. She didn't want to see her. And at that point, I had all 3 children. And
Did she talk to the principal? Yeah, or
she didn't
the
talk
teachers?
to anybody. She didn't talk to the landlord where my wife was living. She didn't talk to the principals. She didn't talk to anybody. She said, I couldn't afford it again, just like everybody says. Once the money ran out, the job was done.
Well, what did she do?
She spoke to the children.
And for $3,000?
That's correct.
No investigation on how did she talk to you?
She did.
And of course, your ex-wife.
She talked to me, my ex-wife, her boyfriend at the time, her fiance, and 3 of my children.
But not the schools, not the doctors?
I listed a list of who she should contact, and I was told by her, you can't afford it. And basically, she's getting $3,000, and that's the limit. You don't go over it. So I said, so I can't imagine what they do for $500. I mean, if the money runs out, I guess they're done. So to me, they're not really doing anything for your children. They're actually looking about what they're going to make, and when the money's out, they're not doing anything on the extra. So the kids really aren't any concern. If she had wanted to talk to the landlord and the principal to see what a good parent I was, they'd have found out that there's some issues there. She wasn't willing to do that because she wasn't getting paid after $125 an hour.
Did you see the report? Or
I did see the report.
Okay, good. All right. And so custody issues were, there wasn't, basically, the kids were, you got 2 of the kids. She didn't fight for custody.
At that time, I had all 3 of the kids.
And she wasn't fighting for custody at all?
No, not at all. She was going to have a good time with her life, and she did. And today, like I said, she's living quite lavishly in a new house they just bought, and she's got more cars and...
Do you have any objections to people contacting you?
I don't.
Okay. If an attorney or a state representative or anybody would like to contact you, how would they contact you?
They can contact me. I'll leave you my email address. I left my home address already. I would welcome it. To be honest, I'd love to save some more lives because I really believe people in the state are at dire straits where you have to look out for the people in the state. And being a career police officer, I would have never guessed that this is the type of judicial system that is out here. Right. I really, truly believed in our system. I believe in our criminal system. I believe in that, but the family court system is absolutely as biased I've ever seen, and I'm ashamed to even say I stepped foot in that courtroom.
As a state legislature, I'm just going to get on my soapbox real quick. We recently worked very diligently to rein some of this in, and part of this was the CACR 26, which was on the ballot. Most people didn't have a clue. We tried to get the information out, but one of the major reasons we wanted that was so that the rules of the court, right now, if are law. If a judge makes a rule, it becomes law. There's one a very bad law that troubles me greatly. Well, one bad rule, and that's Rule 1.2, which is, in the interest of justice, we're going to waive all rules. That speaks volumes. And for some reason, somehow, the media killed it. And they did the people a great disservice.
Absolutely.
And I will remember that, and I will bring it up time and time and time again, because good, honest people are getting screwed. I want to thank you for coming on Speak Up.
I thank you very much for having me, sir.
All right. Officer?
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank
And your
you.
son.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for the Speak Up for this week, and we want to thank you for watching. If you want to get in touch with Officer
Macaione.
How do they do that?
I'll leave you my stuff. I mean, you can get a hold of me through my email address. I'll leave it.
Contact Speak Up at speakupnh@gmail.com, and we'll forward the information. And if you want to be a sponsor of the show, please email us at speakupnh@gmail.com or write us a letter. 68 Bartimus Trail, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03063. Until next week, thanks.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.